Ever wonder where the alphabet comes from? There's a lot of discussion about that. Some people think that it comes from Phoenicia. Some people have argued that it may have come from Egypt, but there's some new interesting research done by a certain person named Douglas Petrovich. It says after years of intense study, Dr. Douglas Petrovich has gathered sufficient evidence to claim that the ancient Israelites took Egyptian hieroglyphics and transformed it into a writing system of 22 alphabetic letters which correspond to the widely recognized Hebrew alphabet used today. I remember speaking with a friend of mine named Brad Sparks, who did some very interesting research, and he also made a similar conclusion that there were Egyptian slaves that were on the Sinai Peninsula, and one day they seem to have just left all of their stuff, all their picks and their axes and everything, and they just left it and it was gone. But found inside there were the basis of the basic alphabet that we have today. So it says archaeologist, epigrapher, and professor of ancient Egyptian studies at Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, Canada, Dr. Petrovich used Hebrew and the Bible to translate inscriptions found on 18 ancient stone slabs. His findings have truly rocked Bible critics to the core. Well, this is good because, there are a lot of Bible critics, a lot of Bible scholars who do not believe the Bible. This is really a sad thing, that when you have a lot of people who are very knowledgeable in the Bible and yet they don't believe the Bible. They think that Moses was smoking something, right? That, there really was not a time when the Israelites were in Egypt. That was all just part of the myth. And so they come up with all kinds of different ways to explain away the things that are actually written in the Bible. There's a huge prejudice. And it's not, just the Germans. It's not just the Americans. It's so many, often the time, it's actually the Jews themselves. I studied in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and a lot of my Jewish Israeli professors, they gave some lip service to the Bible, but they didn't really believe the history contained therein. So this is really good news to see that this man has done some great research. He says, Judaism has always believed that God looked into the Hebrew Bible and created the world, making Hebrew the oldest known language, noted Roni Segal, academic advisor for the Israel Institute of Biblical Studies. However, to find an archaeologist making a similar claim is fascinating. It is generally accepted that hieroglyphics are one of the oldest forms of written communication. Following Petrovich's study of the inscribed Egyptian stone slabs, he asserted that the writings are actually an early form of Hebrew. He believes that the stones recall the Bible's descriptions about the Israelites living in Egypt and concludes that they transformed Egyptian hieroglyphics into Hebrew more than 3,800 years ago. Petrovich's theory is that the Israelites sought to communicate in writing with other Israelites in Egypt by simplifying Pharaoh's complex hieroglyphic writing system into the 22-letter alphabet. There is a connection between ancient Egyptian texts and preserved alphabets, Petrovich stated recently. I absolutely was surprised to find a reference to Moses because he resided in Egypt for less than a year at the time of his provoking of astonishment there. Petrovich's big discovery came while conducting research at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. He deciphered the word Hebrews in a text from 1874 BCE, which is the earliest known alphabet to date. That is really incredible. The Bible notes that the Israelites spent 434 years in Egypt from 1876 BCE to 1442 BCE. Petrovich explains that only an early version of Hebrew, which he calls Hebrew 1.0, works at translating the Egyptian inscriptions. There were many aha moments along the way because I was stumbling across biblical figures never attested before in the epigraphical record, or seeing connections that I had not understood before. While Bible critics claim that the dates the Israelites resided in Egypt are unreliable, Petrovich is proud to use the Bible as his source for proving his translations. He also found the biblical figure Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his half-brothers and became the most powerful leader in Egypt after Pharaoh, as well as Joseph's wife Asenat, and their sons Manasseh and Ephraim. This is really incredible stuff. I mean, this is very powerful stuff. In my opinion, in the research that I've done, this is not absolutely brand new, but it's awesome to hear yet another scholar. Now, his research is new in its own right, but I've heard rumblings of this. As I mentioned, my friend Brad Sparks had come across similar ideas at least 10 years ago, possibly more. And so again, it's awesome to hear yet another scholar, because the academic world is so incredibly jaundiced against the Bible. It isn't even funny. And so here you have a guy who is qualified, and he's finding these ancient sources. I love it. It's very exciting. And additionally, Bible-esque statements have also been deciphered. The statements, "wine is more abundant than the daylight, than the baker, than a nobleman," was found inscribed on a slab dating back to 1834 BCE. This most likely refers to a time when drink was plentiful, but food was scarce. The Bible notes that the Israelites, including Joseph and his family, moved to Egypt because of a famine in the Holy Land. Another sentence reads, "The one having been elevated is weary to forget," which reflects on the biblical verse, "And unto Joseph were born two sons before the year of famine came, whom Asenat, the daughter of Potipherah, priest of On, bore unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house." Genesis 41:50, 51. Hebrew as the world's oldest alphabet was first claimed in the 1920s by German scholar Hubert Grimm. Although Grimme identified some of the Egyptian inscriptions as Hebrew, he was unable to identify all of the alphabet correctly, explains Segal. Petrovich's translation, along with his connecting the text to the Bible, is a very exciting discovery. Using Hebrew 1.0, Petrovich translated inscriptions from 4 different sites in Egypt and Sinai. My discoveries are so controversial because, if correct, they will rewrite the history books and undermine much of the assumptions and misconceptions about the ancient Hebrew people and the Bible that have become commonly accepted in the scholarly world and taught as factual in the world's leading university, said. Truth is unkillable, so if I'm correct, my findings will outlast scholarly scrutiny. I have no doubt whatsoever that Hebrew is the world's oldest alphabet. Well, pretty exciting stuff to see that's the oldest alphabet. Doesn't mean it's the oldest language, okay? And that's a whole other debate, whether people, believe that Hebrew was the language used there in the Garden of Eden is another matter. I personally I don't know. I mean, I think it's very likely, but there's no way to prove that. And so I try not to get dogmatic on that question. But as far as the oldest alphabet, doesn't mean it's the oldest writing system. We know that Egyptian hieroglyphics would have predated this alphabet. So we're not talking about the oldest writing system. We're talking about the oldest alphabet. That's where one letter, one simple symbol, refers to one phoneme. A phoneme is just b or k or d, whereas the others were much more complex and complicated. So the alphabet was a huge, huge advancement in writing and making it very simple to have just a few letters to then write everything that's even imaginable. So pretty exciting stuff. Stick with the Word. God's Word is awesome. We don't need to doubt it. We just need to trust it. And when we do, we begin to see all these different dots connected. It's truly exciting. Hey guys, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel and make sure to share this. God bless you.